I'm Nelson Aspen, author of Hollywood Insider Exposed, and I guess this is segment 2 of the Where Are They Now soap tour. And if you read the book, or have read the book, you know that I have a very dear, long friendship with my pal, Marcia McCabe, who's here in my little apartment in New York City. Cheers, Marcia.
Cheers, darling.
Marcia and I have been friends for nearly 30 years. It's freaking me out. My first friend at Search for Tomorrow, and still one of my best friends. What year did you start in Search for Tomorrow?
1978.
And tell us the story where you were a girl from the main line of Philadelphia, and all of a sudden you're on a soap opera, or how did you get there?
Well, I have to say, my arrival on Search was sort of Cinderella, because I had worked as an extra on the show for many times, and I was a very ambitious young lady, and I was determined not to wait tables. I said, I don't care if I do extra work or under fives forever. I want to really just be an actress. And when I was an extra, I would observe. I'd say, now, how are they working with the camera? What are they doing? Because acting for theater is very different than television. So I kind of used my days as an extra as sort of a class. Other people were going to the payphone. You had no cell phones back then. I was watching. I just thought it was a great way to learn. So I went up to the casting office after I finished as an extra, and I said, excuse me, Miss Starkey. There was a producer named Gail Starkey.
Was that? I remember Gail Starkey.
Yes, and I said, is there anything for next week? She said, hopefully. And as I said that, Mary Ellis Bunham, who was the executive producer,
creator of The Real World.
Yes, oh my God.
The ultimate soap opera.
Oh, she made she invented reality TV. I mean,
she did.
She really
she did.
And she had the good sense to hire me, but I digress. So I
because she was so real.
Oh. So she saw me and she goes, excuse me, have you auditioned for the part of Sunny? And I went, no. I said, I auditioned for Lainey, her older sister, but I didn't get the part. She goes, talk to Stanley Simple, our casting director. So I went, yes, Miss Bunham. Thank you so much, Miss Bunham. I'm thinking, wow, this is cool. So I go in there.
Right place at the right time.
And he knew me, but I guess he never thought of me as Sunny. I guess I actually got pretty far in the Lainey process, but I was too young. That'll never happen again. Anyway.
No, but if you don't know Search for Tomorrow, Sunny Adamson was like the Lois Lane of Henderson, the town of Henderson, USA. And I described Sunny as the scrappy character, because she was the Lois Lane. She was mischievous, but she was a heroine.
But when I came on, I was like a student in college. And so anyway, so I auditioned, I got the part. But the interesting part of it was I screen tested opposite this very handsome actor who immediately made me nervous, because I took one look at him and said, oh my God, he is just a dreamboat. He had these amazing cheekbones and just gorgeous eyes, and he seemed like he needed someone to make him smile. And I said, that could be me. So I got the part, and fast forward, and he's now my husband, Christopher Goutman, who is executive producer of Basketball Turns, and we have our 25th wedding anniversary coming up, and just recently celebrated the 31st anniversary of our first date. So there you have it.
So there you go. Be careful who you screen test with, because you might just get married to them.
No, but it was an amazing job, and I people who used to watch back in the day knew I had sort of a tragic childhood. I lost my parents in my house in fire. So we're
talking about Marcia, not Sunny.
Yeah. In real life, I lost my parents in a fire when I was 21. That basically like pulling the rug out of my life. So I felt like this was a little God intervention. He gave me a job. He gave me a new family, including Nelson. Mm-hmm. Yes, my baby brother. And I met my husband. So I feel like it was like a real gift. It was a gift, and I just enjoyed every minute that I was there.
Well, and I would like to point out that my first day on Search, I was very new and very scared and very wide-eyed, and I had watched her. In my mind, she was the gal with the long, straight hair and the dynamic storyline, and she was the first person that reached out and welcomed me and made friends, and here we are all these years later. You had Wayne Tippett played your
He
dad.
died this year.
He also played Heather Locklear's dad on
Yeah.
Melrose Place. You had a lot of famous faces throughout the years. Who are some of the people that you most fondly remember working with at Search?
Oh, well, of course, we had Michelle Phillips, and we had, oh gosh, the gentleman who played the father of the Brady Bunch.
Robert Reed.
Robert Reed.
Played Lloyd Kendall.
We had, who else knows?
Well, I mean, Janie
Oh,
Krakowski.
Jane Krakowski, of course, who, you know, we went to see her in a show and she didn't snub us. But
She
then
did snub, but then
realized-
she apologized.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a mix-up. Jane
She
thought we were
said-
coming back there. We thought she was coming out to us.
We thought she, you know,
Dined
slid
and
out the back
dashed.
door. But anyway, so many people. I mean, so many wonderful people. And it's not even the stars that were in there. It was just the people that you felt like were part of your family.
And Search, but Search was on for so many decades, 35 years in all.
Olympia Dukakis.
My
Let's
first
not
scene was
forget.
with Olympia Dukakis and whatever the daughter's name was. Roger knows these things. She was the original Dinah on Guiding Light. Angela was her character on Search. Anyway, I digress. There were so many soaps then. Now we're down to 6. When you got the news that Search was ending, because it did seem like nothing could ever end Search. What was the feeling, or was there this cloud, this axe hanging over you at the end?
I have to say, the last 6 months that we were on the air, I really felt like the death knell was clanking in the background, even though we hadn't been told that we were canceled. I just think the vibe was just, everyone was waiting for the other shoe to drop. And the day that we found out, I had been shooting a commercial with David Forsyth, Fruit and Fiber.
This was her former love interest on the show. He played
Yeah.
Hogan.
Yeah, who is still a friend, and he just had a pretty nasty health scare, but he's doing really well. And it's amazing how the people in your life, people that you treasure forever, and somehow figure out a way to stay connected. But
You should have had more Fruit and Fiber.
exactly.
To Fruit and Fiber.
Yeah, and Chardonnay, which has no fiber, but
It's all right.
It's got fruit.
Have a sip. She and David were shooting these Fruit and Fiber commercials, and then you get the news.
So the whole time I was shooting the commercial, I was thinking, oh my gosh, this is so boring. Oh my gosh. You know, it would be like 3.5 hours for one sentence, and you'd be like, this is ridiculous. Anyway, so I was on the way home thinking, I'm so glad I have this job on Search. I'm so glad. So I get home, it's Halloween. That night, David Lawrence, the EP, and back then there was no cell phones, I barely had, I think we had answering machines. He called me at home and he told me the show was canceled. And the difference is that nowadays when a show gets canceled, it's months down the road that they actually go off the air. This was October 31st. Our last day of work was about 5 weeks later.
I remember, it was Halloween.
It was.
I moved home from Los Angeles to New York to take a job on Search, and the day I arrived in New York was Halloween, and that's when we got the news.
Yeah, it was like trick or treat.
Fruit or Fiber?
Anyway, so it was, I have to say, I was very sad, but I was it was almost a relief in a way, because everybody was so depressed, and we had like the EP du jour. David Lawrence, who knew nothing about soaps, was our last producer. And clearly he was put there just to, like, you know,
Bury it.
yeah. All the people that he, Inside or whatever, were long gone. So I just kind of figured that it was a matter of time. And
How many years had it been for you?
Almost 9.
9.
So I was tired, you know, getting up at 5 in the morning, learning the lines. I was really, I felt like, even days I wasn't working, I was answering fan mail, and back in those days, they'd fly you around and you'd do like guest hosting of talk shows and radio, and it was an amazing gig, it really was, and I took full advantage. Whenever they said, would you mind, I say, sure. I hosted the St. Paul Winter Carnival with Doug Stevenson, who was a hometown boy from Minnesota, and I have to say, if you're from the Midwest and you know Minneapolis, that is like the biggest, it's like the Rose Bowl parade. And Willard Scott, Doug Stevenson, and myself, and it was like, and CBS like, thank you so much for doing this. I'm like, what are you thanking me for? I got to ride around on a float waving to people, it was really just sort of an unbelievable experience, and there were so many opportunities back then because the shows were so popular.
Then after 9 years on Search, you're unemployed. There is a story in my book about how Marcia and I went to the unemployment office together. Marcia's not afraid to wear fur. She's not afraid to wear diamonds. And off we went to the unemployment office. In those days, you had to file in person. In those days, you could smoke in the building. I seem to recall we were all smoking and waiting in line for the unemployment. I quit 10 years ago. Yes. So then the next acting role wasn't too long after you went to One Life to Live.
Yes, I went to One Life to Live, and it was a really great part. I embraced it fully. Her name was Alicia Grant. She was a complete opposite of Sunny. She was a pampered, rich, very loving person, but she was the wife of sort of the town capitalist in Landview. And she was in Paris, and he'd sort of started canoodling with Fiona Hutchinson's character.
Gabrielle.
So I came on, and of course, the husband is not overly overjoyed to see me because he's got this relationship with Gabrielle, but then I tell him I'm pregnant, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm going to have a baby. And very exciting. So the only thing that was bad about that part for me was I took the job. I signed for a year. I was happy to sign for a year. I didn't need a long-term contract. Paul Rausch, the producer at the time, he was a very nice guy, but he was not particularly honest with me, because when I started on the show, it was my first gig post-Search, and back in those days, if you were a quote-unquote soap opera star, your next gig became a big deal. So I did Michael Logan, TV Guide, I did all this press. Well, Paul Rausch knew when he hired me that the character wasn't even going to last a year, but he didn't tell me. So if I'd known that, I still would have done the part, but I wouldn't have done all the press. So I was all over the place, and then after I was on the show for only 7 months, they decided it was a baby switching story. So they knew they were going to kill me from the beginning, but he didn't tell me. So I should have been on for a year. I was only on for about 9 months. Pregnancy. But
that's long for a soap opera pregnancy.
But it was. I just felt like it was not completely honest. And Paul Rausch and I and my husband are friends, so. I know it wasn't intentional, but I don't think he realized at the time how upsetting it was. Not just to lose the job, but to have poured so much into being Alicia on the show and like doing all this press and then having the role end before it should have. I felt like it was really unfair.
Well, you were such the heroine of Search for Tomorrow. You did the Gary Tomlin storyline of the date rape, which, I mean, Sunny getting date raped was a huge story, not just for the show, but publicity-wise. I mean, it was in sort of uncharted territory. And then,
well, I don't mean to interrupt you, but it's the only time in the history of daytime that they have devoted a show to just one story. It was just, they did a timeline.
Of a date.
Do you remember that?
Yep.
It was the entire show. And I think Gary won a WGA award for that. And I think it was a beautifully crafted piece. I do have that on DVD. I have a copy of that. And I'm really proud of it for a lot of reasons. Not just because I think it really felt real. And I got so much mail from women, because that was just the beginning of that whole thing. There were all these acquaintance rape things that were happening, and people just didn't talk about it because it was taboo. You know, if somebody that you knew came onto you and somehow it was always twisted around that you had encouraged it. So it was a really good story, and it was very well done. And I really was proud of that, so.
But you go from that, and then you go to One Life to Live, where you were treated, you know, maybe disingenuously is the way to say it. So now you're feeling burned. Marcia's disappeared from the screens for a while, then you don't turn up again until Another World. Your husband, at that point, was he executive producer or just a director? He was working at Another World.
And I honestly, I was just, I wanted to have a baby. And I finished on One Life late in '89. And I just, you know, it did put a bad taste in my mouth, honestly. Not that I didn't want to do another soap, but I just felt like, I don't know, just weird. So I sort of concentrated
Turn to
on
motherhood.
Yeah, and I had my daughter in '92, who is now going to college next year, who is a singer. She is amazing. She's got a gorgeous voice. In fact, I was going to bring you a CD. I was so late getting here that I forgot it.
She played Maria in Sound of Music.
Yes,
I know that.
among other things. She's great. She's a wonderful, wonderful kid.
And your son Nick?
Who is almost 14.
Teenagers, you have teenagers. How did you get to Another World? You played Bunny opposite Tom
I did have
Eplin.
another part.
Before Bunny? There was
Yes,
a pre-Bunny?
I was on All My Children.
I missed the All My Children. What can I
You
say? I'm
missed
not an
it?
ABC person. Go ahead. What did I? Who were you on
I
All My
played-
Children?
I
Did you know
played-
that, Roger?
I don't remember that.
Her name, okay, now I have to, they called me the Barracuda. She was I had this great story. I was a trial attorney. I was Adam's lawyer when he was fighting Dixie for custody. So I was on and off for 6 months.
Yeah.
And it was a great part. I mean, she was very showy. The only thing was she just didn't stop talking. So I'd be,
I can't imagine.
Yvonne was
You
a baby,
being like
and I'd
that.
come, and I'd come home, and she'd be like, you know, and I'd be like, I'd have like 50 pages of dialogue to learn. It was really, so that was my little interim gig, but it was fun. It was a very showy part, and Another World was Tom Eplin was a trip. I'll tell you, he's a very charismatic guy.
Fans love him. They still miss him.
I had a lot of fun with him. The thing about Tom was, he improv'd a lot, and it was like flying by the seat of your pants, but it was really fun, and I think we really worked well together. What do you think, Roger? You watched it.
I love that whole.
It was just kind of crazy, me in a catsuit with a gun. I don't know.
You can pull off the catsuit. And then, now we've taken you to As the World Turns.
Leslie Dupre, I'm sorry.
Who's Leslie Dupre? Was
Was
that the
character
lawyer?
in All My Children, Leslie Dupre.
It's like kind of like a porn star lawyer.
I feel like, am I
Yeah.
getting Alzheimer's? What was my
You have many
Wait,
personalities.
What's your name?
Leslie Dupre.
Okay.
And then we go to As the World Turns. So you're coming sort of full circle. You're going back to the Procter & Gamble show. Back in the good old days, they used to send us the boxes full of P&G products. I'm sure they don't do that anymore. P&G pink slips, probably. But it was a one-day role. I mean, it was, the character you played on As the World Turns was so exciting and could have been an important role forever kind of thing. Tell us about that.
Okay. Well, her name was Carolyn, and this was actually, I think, an amazing story. I think that my husband shows up for GLAAD Awards for a very good reason, because they have really done so many multifaceted.
She's referring to her real-life husband, Chris Goutman from As the World Turns.
Husband.
Not your on-screen husband
No.
in As the World Turns.
Yes, Brian. The story was that Brian was married to Lucinda, who's the matriarch of the show. And she's an older woman, and she meets this guy, and it's very romantic. He's younger, but they just become like besotted with each other. So the only problem was he never wanted to have sex with her. It was all about, oh, you've been ill, oh, you can't, no, you're not well enough, darling, you're not well enough. So one night Brian gets inebriated. He was probably
He was over at this place. He left my place and went to Oakdale.
And
They all leave for Oakdale.
so Lucinda's grandson, Luke, is he's gay on the show. He and Noah are like the hot gay couple on the show. So Brian one night at a party is completely inebriated, comes on to Luke, and Luke is like I'm done, like grandma's husband
His
is coming on
step-grandfather.
to me. So he tracks down the ex-wife, that's me, to find out did they get divorced because he was gay. And of course, he tracks me down. The thing that was weird about it was a one-day gig. My husband's the boss of the show, so I'm sure all these people are like, oh, why can't you darn. I didn't even want to do it. He said, oh, please, honey, please, you're perfect for this part. Please do it. So, and we're on location. So it was almost like, I I went down to Brooklyn, I did my makeup, because I said, I'm not doing this if I don't want any special treatment. And I really just, pay me scale, I'll just do it. So I went down to Brooklyn, I had my makeup done, I rode in the van, Chris like, sit next to me, I'm thinking, oh, God, So everybody, I'm sure they were all like, what is his wife doing this gig for? But I was age appropriate for the part. And, but it was over in like 20 seconds, because Chris is very fast. So it's like 5, 4, 3, 2, I'm like, because if you're in the studio, it's a lot, you do a thing, you do dry, you do
But that's something we're talking about. This whole trend now of, just shoot, no rehearsal, let's go out and do this, that, and the other thing. We remember the days of dry rehearsal at 7 in the morning. You rehearsed your butt off all day long, so by the time you taped it, you'd already been through it 8 or 10 times.
Right.
How is the medium different from an actor's point of view now?
I think it depends. I think for a day player, like if you're a contract player and you're doing this part for months or whatever at a time, it's easy to kind of just show up and do your stuff. But when you don't know the character, you really, I met Van Hansis once or twice socially, but I certainly didn't know him. Working with an actor, a fellow actor on the soap, like a theater, it's like, you get a rhythm, you understand, you know each other, you look at each other, you kind of, but when you're just sort of walking in and doing something, it's just, it was fine. And I guess it was fine because there was supposed to be an awkwardness between myself and him, because I didn't really know him, I'd never met him, my character hadn't. But I think from an acting standpoint, I kind of liked the more theatrical preparation that we used to have in the old days. I mean, it was, I think the work was a lot better because people felt prepared. I think nowadays some stuff goes on the air and you go, should that take have actually been aired?
And well, now we're dealing with the cancellation of As the World Turns. You're in a unique and strange position because that's something your husband comes home at night and you hear the good, the bad, the ugly, and now it's ending. You've been through the cancellation of A Soap with Search. That was, albeit, a much quicker, like you said, we had to wrap it up in a couple of weeks. As the World Turns has the luxury of months to wrap things up. How would you, and Chris has been quoted as saying, we're just proceeding with our storylines and, we'll go. Is that something you agree with? Is it something you like? You've watched the show? As the World Turns and Guiding Light and Search were kind of sister shows altogether.
I think it's a great show. And the thing that is, the reality is that CBS is canceling the show. P&G is still very much behind the show. In fact, P&G, as we speak, is trying to sell the show to syndicators. It's a long shot, but this year alone, they've been nominated for GLAAD Awards, WGA Awards. My husband just won the DGA Award for Achievement in Directing, Daytime, which I think is huge. I mean, he's been nominated 4 times, he's never won, so this is a big deal. I just flew back last night. I was there for 24 hours. I'm like, where am I?
Leslie Dupre.
Leslie Dupre, that was her name. But I think that, the death knell is sounding, I think, but he's going to tell the story that he wants to tell, and of course he'll wrap it up, but it is a luxury to have the time to say, okay, we have 7 months left. Right now they have, everyone's employed until July. He's probably going to be employed until August, September, because he has to do all the post-production and everything else. The show is officially going off the air the first week of September.
Oh, and can't Carolyn come back just for one more day to talk to Van?
But it's not there anymore.
Oh well.
So there you have it. Maybe Roger, you would like to pick up the slot. Maybe you'd like
Maybe
to
We Love
As the
Soaps
World
should
Turns.
pick up As the World Turns. Can you imagine? Roger's behind the camera right now.
Maybe just Carolyn, her own show.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. The Carolyn Wheatley Hour.
There you go. But maybe we'll bring in, Bob and Kim and some of the veterans and all that stuff.
It's a great show, and I think what I love about what he's done is he really has kept the integrity of the show. He hasn't done anything crazy. The show is very beloved, and I think he's done a great job with it. So no matter what, he's done whatever he can do, and it's not up to him. It was up to CBS, and they just said, Wayne Brady doing Let's Make a Deal is much more interesting than any soap opera. So I don't know what's going to take his place. Probably something equally as exciting.
There you go. It's a transition time. And what do you watch on television? Do you watch any television other than As the World Turns? Because you're a supportive spouse.
I'm not really a big TV watcher. I will say, because I don't know if it's because my daughter sings, but I love music. So I watch Idol. Not all the time, but usually when they get past the first chunk, which is like, I don't want to hear people singing off key, God Bless America, but I do enjoy that. And I did watch a little of the Grammys last night, although I was landing from California, so I managed to watch Lady Gaga and Elton. I love Elton. Lady Gaga, I'm not really a fan. I think she's got a beautiful voice, but why she's hiding behind all this nonsense? I just think, get out there and sing. And I think everything...
You love David Bowie. That is Marcia McCabe's very favorite musician of all time, is David Bowie. Am I correct?
Yes. Gosh, what a memory.
I'm still holding on to it a little bit at a time.
Well, I just think he's amazing. But right now, like last night, I watched some of the Beyonce has this gorgeous instrument, and everything she did was overproduced. She had people marching and hard hats. And
she should have just taken the band out to Brooklyn. That's what she should have done.
Am I wrong? You have this gift. You don't need 15 people marching behind you. Just get
And Marcia's forgetting that she got a kiss from one of our mutually favorite actors of all time when he appeared on Search for Tomorrow, Viggo Mortensen.
Viggo.
You got a kiss from Viggo. There was a little bit of a spark there between whatever his name was and Sunny.
Yes, he had those high cheekbones, a la Chris Goutman. But this was funny. So he's on Letterman, and they showed a clip from Search for Tomorrow, and I'm like, because Dave's like, oh, remember those early days in your career when you were on Search for Tomorrow? And he's like, you could see it was like, so they had a clip, and I was like, am I in this clip?
Were you?
No.
No. Because he had a lot of scenes with it. All right, well, we have now concluded episode 2 of the Where Are They Now tour. Marcia, you can stop talking, we can do some serious drinking. We love you from New York. We love soaps.com, .net, .any other else you can put after it. And we'll see you next time.
Keep watching.
Marcia McCabe.